Hi, everyone, and welcome to week 2 of Taurus season. I'm Laura of Sage Astrology. I am an astrologer and tarot reader, and I've been studying astrology for about 9 years now. I've been doing readings for about 5 years, and I just love astrology so much. I'm so excited to be able to bring you these updates that I'm going to do weekly or bi-weekly, and you can follow me at Instagram at Sage Astrology. You can also follow me on TikTok at Sage of the Stars for shorter, more frequent updates. I also have a Substack, which is also Sage Astrology at Sage Astrology. And on Substack, I put out bi-weekly new moon and full moon guides. I also do other things periodically on Substack, so follow me there if you want more updates. I'm really excited. Let's get going. Today, I'm going to cover the next 2 weeks, so April 28th all the way through to May 12th. And that's because that's kind of there's a lot happening within that 2 week period, not as much happening over the next week. But I wanted to cover that span also because I wanted to talk about Donald Trump. Now, I don't consider myself to be a very political person. I do think that there are certain times in history where you need to be political, and this is absolutely one of those times. So people who know me know that I have been very deep into the news lately. It's been hard to suck myself out of it. I have very, very, very strong opinions, as all of us should. And so I'm going to try to not be biased when I talk about his chart. That can be a little challenging for me because, like I said, I have so many feelings, but I think it's really important to just take a look at what's going on for him and see how it plays out in real time. So with that, let's get going and we'll start with the energy update. So I'll show you the chart for April 28th, which is today. Here it is. So we've got a lot kind of lightening up. You'll see here we have this Mars-Pluto opposition, which I talked about in my last video. That Mars-Pluto opposition was making us very angry. And if we weren't conscious of our anger, it was probably informing the things that we did in a subconscious way. Hopefully, we were able to do some things to release some of that anger, to transmute it into something else so we weren't lashing out at other people. I know I was definitely being a little mean occasionally because I just couldn't contain all this anger inside my body. So hopefully you were able to manage it a little bit better than I was. And I had, I knew it was coming and I still had a hard time. So that's just a rough transit, is that Pluto Mars opposition, which again, I talked about in my last video if you want to learn more about that. But we also yesterday on April 27th had the new moon in Taurus. And this was a really wonderful just break. And it was right in the middle of this Mars Pluto opposition. So we had a square between Mars and Pluto and the sun and the moon. And that really helped to take us out of that kind of endless cycle of, or seemingly endless cycle of fury and rage and like power seeking. It really took us out of that and helped us see that we really need to actually slow down. Taurus is the slowest sign, the quietest sign of the zodiac. It's very much kind of in its own world. So if you or someone you know is got a lot of Taurus energy, they might not be, but they might be a little quieter. They might really appreciate their alone time. And so this new moon was kind of encouraging us to find new ways to detach from all of the noise around us and all of the noise that we also create within. So this Mars-Pluto opposition, there's a lot happening in the world around us, and we can kind of get sucked up into that. There's also a lot happening within us, and so these things can kind of play on each other and spiral. This Taurus new moon was kind of like, no, let's pull you out of that. Let's find ways to slow down, to find our inner peace, to find our inner calm. One of the things that I did was actually try and like just detach from my phone. And I think I'm going to try and do that more moving forward, because if we're constantly attached to our phone, we have no way to stop the constant influx of all this information that is going to cause some kind of emotional reaction. So if we can find ways to simplify, one of the things I was thinking about, I'll stop sharing this for a moment. One of the things that I was thinking about yesterday was the fact that we are never doing just one thing. Like, when's the last time you watched TV and were not also on your phone? It's just really rare these days to not be trying to do a million things all at once. And Taurus and this Taurus new moon allows us to just try and simplify and do less. Taurus is the best reminder that it's okay to do less. And the more you do less, actually, the more it does for you. So we're still at the, like, this new moon was just yesterday. So if you're seeing this on Monday, the 28th, we still are in a Taurus moon, and you can kind of set some intentions to simplify your life a little bit more moving forward. Of course, you can set that intention at any time, but the energy is kind of behind you right now. Through the rest of Taurus season, though, so all the way through to middle of May, that's still something that you can try and practice. So that was happening yesterday. Later this week, we will see Venus move from Pisces into Aries, and this will be a pretty big change, especially because Venus was in a pretty close connection to Saturn over the last few weeks because Venus was moving pretty slowly. It was coming off of a retrograde period, then it kind of was stuck to Saturn in the North Node for a while. So this could have felt like strains or restrictions in your relationships. It could have felt like a real need to get serious about who you want, making decisions about who you want to keep in your life, how you want those relationships to be in your life, and also things you want to do, your resources, how you want to manage your resources. This was a time to get serious about that so that you can be more prepared for the future. So all of that kind of restriction around those relationships, the resources, all of that stuff will start to loosen, which will be really nice. And we'll start to be able to act more in our own interests. We will have this Venus-Neptune conjunction, so that's just, I don't know, a really dreamy conjunction where we can kind of, especially if you're more of a Venus person, if you've got a heavy Venus signature in your chart, this could be a time where you maybe start to daydream a little bit, start to fantasize, and mostly about things that you really want for yourself. This is going to be soon. I think it'll be after this week. Let's see when it'll be exactly. So getting to May 8th, oh no, it'll be after that. So it'll be a few weeks from now, but eventually we'll have Venus into a trine with Mars, and that'll be a really good time to kind of move forward towards your goals. You'll have this desire of Venus in a really great relationship with this passion and motivation and ability to move, and that'll be a really good time to propel yourself forward. So over the next couple of weeks, I'll have that info in another video when we get there, but over the next couple of weeks, start paying attention to the things you feel yourself wanting. You don't have to act on them yet. There will be a more optimal time to do that towards the middle of May. So I want to skip ahead to May 5th. This is the chart for May 5th, and you'll see on May 5th, Pluto goes retrograde. For most of us in our personal lives, unless we're Pluto people, this probably won't make a super large impact, but on the in the macro sense, we may start to see some things change. I remember a few years ago, I think it was the last Trump administration, I think it was with Rudy Giuliani. I'm sorry I don't have a source for this, but I think it was the day that Pluto turned retrograde. Something came out about Rudy Giuliani, and he was like, he was held accountable for something that he did. I'm sorry, you can look that up. I don't remember exactly, but things like that may start to happen. When a planet goes retrograde, it just kind of shifts its focus a bit. And so things tend to be either a little more hidden, or things from the past can tend to come back and come out. So it'll be interesting to see if anything happens with that. This Pluto is in a very brief sextile with Venus. And so it could be, there's some old things, old like relationship traumas that come back up to the surface, or old financial issues that come back up to the surface. But that sextile will be short-lived because Venus is moving pretty quickly, so not too much to worry about there. I never anything to worry about with astrology. Things are going to happen. It's just that the stars give us clues as to what those things are. But we can just be informed, and then we can prepare. We can prepare ourselves in different ways just because we have this knowledge. So nothing to worry about there. This is where I want to bring in Donald Trump's chart, because there's a lot happening right now that interacts with his birth chart. So I'll show you his birth chart just briefly. This is his birth chart. You'll see he has Mars rising with his Leo ascendant. It is technically in the 12th house, but it's very close to his ascendant. You see he was born on an eclipse, so he has the sun in a very close conjunction with the north node, and he has the moon in a very close conjunction with the south node. And this is where he gets a lot of his chaotic energy, his kind of quick decision making, if you can call it that. And just this is why chaos follows him around, is because he was born on this eclipse. The north node makes things bigger exponentially. And so the sun, which represents our ego, is in a close, or, for him, is in a close conjunction with this north node. And so what gets bigger is the ego. He also, in his birth chart, doesn't have a very his Saturn is not in a very good position. So Saturn gives us a little bit of self-control. It also is our attitude towards rules, towards systems, and his Saturn is debilitated. Saturn likes to be in Capricorn. It does not like to be in Cancer. It's also in a close conjunction with his Venus. So this is somebody who doesn't have a high regard for the rules and is also very stubborn when it comes to creating his own rules. So we have this Mars rising. That also gives him some of his fierce, I want to do it my way. I don't care what you say. I'm going to do it. A little bit of impulsivity, especially because this is in a contact with his sun. It's in a sextile with his sun and his north node. He's also got Uranus here, conjunct his sun, conjunct his north node, adding to that chaotic nature. In a way, he is kind of the embodiment of chaos, if I were to read this really literally. And he can just do erratic things without a lot of notice. We know this. It's just all reflected here in the birth chart is what I'm trying to show you. And so I just wanted to give that background to talk about these transits that are happening right now, because for him, this is a really significant time. He has transiting Uranus has just crossed over his midheaven. So the midheaven is our status. It's our role that we play in life. It is our career, but it's more like our LinkedIn profile. What do people who don't know us see and know and assume about us? When you have Uranus crossing over your midheaven, that's like a huge shift in your status and the role that you play in life. And so there are big changes that are just starting for him that are going to continue over the next few years. This is kind of a big deal. It only happens once in a lifetime, if you even make it that long. So pretty big deal. And it's being compounded by the fact that this Jupiter, so this is on May 5th. I believe right now Jupiter's at 20 degrees. So actually on the day that I'm recording this, on April 28th, Jupiter is on top of his north node, which means that he's kind of got this, whatever he's doing right now is really putting him on the path that he's supposed to take. And this is my feeling on that. As much as I have feelings about Donald Trump and about everything that's happening, I do believe that we all, whether we are doing good things in the world or whether we're doing bad things or harmful things in the world, we're meant to play that part. So Jupiter comes through and touches his north node and is adding kind of fuel to his ability to play that part. So I think currently this week, especially because by May 5th, Jupiter is going to be then conjunct his sun. And you can't really, if Jupiter's conjunct his north node, it's conjunct his sun because they're so close together in his birth chart. But so over the next week or so, there's going to be, an even more expanded ego, if you can even believe that. And this is not an unlucky transit here. This is giving him a little bit of resilience, I'd say. Like if there is anything that he could get in trouble for, like he's going to have luck on his side. But that Jupiter transit is more short-lived than this Uranus transit. And this Uranus on May 5th is in a square to Donald Trump's Mars. It's approaching a square to his ascendant. The thing about Uranus and Mars, they're both pretty energy-packed planets. So Uranus brings this kind of chaos. Things can happen with absolutely no warning. And Mars is all force, all fury. It moves so quickly. So you have this kind of like direction you want to go with Mars. Now this is the natal Mars. So Mars has a path and an idea, and it's going, going, going. And then Uranus is like, I'm going to come through and I'm going to surprise you with something you weren't expecting. And this is where we can get a lot of accidents. Like if you think about, it's literally like driving a car through an intersection. Let's say you're drag racing through, a busy, on a big street, and then you come across an intersection and you don't brake, and then Uranus comes through the other direction and you get in a car crash, right? So there's heavy potential for, I will say, accidents or missteps. Now, for at least the beginning of this transit, Jupiter is kind of cushioning the fall, but that Jupiter will eventually move out of the way. I want to zoom ahead to the full moon, which is on May 12th. So on this day, the sun is approaching Donald Trump's midheaven. It is obviously opposed to the moon. So this day is pretty significant. I don't want to say it's life-changing, but whatever happens on this May 12th full moon is going to be really important moving forward for his image, for his status, right? This full moon is in a sextile to his Saturn, so whatever happens on this day will have something to do with how he leverages his authority and how he approaches rules. It's also sextile to Saturn in the sky. So, it's a little wider, but it is sextile to Saturn in the sky. And so it will definitely have something to do with that authority, authoritarianism, rule creation, rule destruction. We also have on this day, he has Mars conjunct his natal Pluto. So if we think about that opposition that we experienced over the last week or so, where Pluto opposite Mars can be a lot of subconscious things coming to the surface and creating this like hostility. When you have Mars and Pluto together, since Mars is transiting, there's definitely a little bit of that subconscious trauma bubbling up, but it's a little bit more focused and direct. So on this day, he could very much be acting out of his own. Pluto is also power, the thirst for power. And so whatever happens on this day, he's going to have he's going to want to maintain that power. That's going to be very important to him to maintain that power on this day. There have been some rumors floating around about Trump deciding to instate martial law, and I don't know whether that's going to happen, but I think he's going to be entering a period of increased defensiveness. The reality is that he has the lowest approval rating of any president basically ever, at least in the last 80 years at this point in his term. And there is an uprising happening. And I don't necessarily mean that in a violent way, but there are people there's protests. 5 million people went out to protest a couple of weeks ago. And there's another protest scheduled for May 1st. And this is a huge event. And I think he's starting to see that he's got some competition. There is some kind of threat to his ability to stay in office. And so the ways that he's going to act out will heavily be in favor of maintaining that power. And he's hurting right now. So you'll see here, this is Chiron at 24 degrees of Aries. That's exactly the midpoint between his Venus and his Saturn. Now remember, Venus and Saturn, he has very specific ways that he wants to turn the tides. He has very specific ways that he wants things to go, and they're not kind of in adherence with the general consensus about how things should go. So Chiron represents the places we've been wounded, and when it's transiting, it tends to bring up some pains in different areas of our lives. So with this Chiron square to his Saturn Venus, he's going to be seeing places where his idea of the rules and how he wants to influence the community to respond to his rules, it's not necessarily going to be working for him. And so he's going to be, again, acting out of that. How do I maintain? He's hurting. He's like, when a dog gets injured, it lashes out. That's kind of where he is right now. You'll see I've shifted the view of this chart. That's because before I was talking kind of in psychological terms, and I wanted to change the view to look at kind of physical events. And to me, Placidus is very much psychological goings on, and whole sign, which is the view we're looking at now, is more like physical, actual, tangible events that occur. So I just wanted to shift the view here and just kind of reframe what we just talked about in the terms of his impact on the world, right? His sun, his north node, his Uranus, they're all in the 11th house. So this ego that he has plays out in the realm of community, of networks. He likes to leverage his network for things. He likes to contribute to a network of people in one way or another. He likes to schmooze people, right? He also likes to have authority over people and make sure that that's known. So with Jupiter kind of transiting his sun and his north node, he's really in a heightened state of influencing that community, influencing those networks, particularly with money, bringing wealth to people. And this Mars conjunct Pluto, that's going to be in his first house. So really defending his existence, defending his decisions, defending his leadership. That's where he's focused right now. And so those things are just going to play out in his own chaotic way. So what do we make of this? I know that was a lot, but I wanted to show it just because of how much is really happening over this next week for him, and because it will impact us in one way or another, whether the impact is felt immediately or whether the impact is felt later. And I think the reason it was important to me to share this is to demonstrate that he is carrying out, he's playing a part. And it is the part that, for better or for worse, he was meant to play. Now, I happen to believe, and it took me a while to get here because I was so not in a good place with everything that was happening, but I do really believe that all of this drama will come to an end and it will not work out in his favor. We have really big, huge transits coming up over the next few months and over the next year. We have a Uranus-Pluto trine that is huge pieces of information coming out into the open, things that we can't even dream of, secrets coming out that will change everything. And that's going to happen in September. And then we also have a Saturn-Neptune conjunction in Aries that is kind of official. It's exact in February. So I don't think that his reign, like I want to call it the reign of terror, right? Like I don't think that it's going to be permanent, and I think it will be a very different environment we're living in come February. It might be confusing for a lot of different reasons, but this is kind of the way that I see it right now. This is the peak. The next few weeks are his peak, and it's just going to be a decline from there. So Enough about Donald Trump. Let's go back to what you need to know over the next couple of weeks. I've skipped ahead for us to the full moon on May 12th, and that's going to be in 22 degrees. The sun will be conjunct Uranus, so get ready for some unexpected things to occur. And this sun Uranus is in a sextile to the north node, so whatever happens will be something, whether it's expected or not, it will be something that's putting you on the path you're supposed to be on, that your soul is seeking, right? We also have this Mercury Pluto square. So going back to some of that old anger, going back to some of the old hurts and pains that we've kind of buried underneath, Mercury is kind of wanting to bring those to the surface. And because this is a Scorpio full moon, it's going to be a little easier. Scorpio is ruled by Pluto, and so the energies are really aligned, and we want to look at what Pluto is doing in order to get a really full sense of what to expect for this full moon. So be prepared to maybe talk about some things that you haven't talked about in a while. And it doesn't have to be, it might be scary, it might be hard, but actually the result of this will be a lot of freedom. Freeing yourself from burdens that you've been carrying for far too long. And so that's the opportunity of this full moon. If you're into magic or anything like that, whether it's magic or setting intentions, the full moon is a really amazing time to release. For this full moon, it's a really good time to release any baggage that you don't want to be carrying anymore. That's what's stored in that Scorpio sphere. That's this moon. The Scorpio moon is kind of old baggage. The sun in Taurus wants to be calm. It wants to be at peace. And so freeing yourself from that baggage will help you find that state of peace. And in this case, because the sun is so close to Uranus, it can bring a lot of freedom, a lot more independence, and some surprises that might bring you to good places that you may never have even imagined going. So that's the full moon, and that's where we'll end this energy update. Thanks for sticking with me through kind of the examples with Donald Trump. It will be interesting to see what plays out, what shakes out with that. If you liked this video, feel free to subscribe, feel free to share it with your friends. Follow me at Sage Astrology on Instagram, at Sage of the Stars on TikTok. Follow my Substack at Sage Astrology, and visit my website, sageastrology.com, to book your session. Thanks so much, and I'll see you in a couple weeks.